Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Special thank you to all of you and our sponsors. Today, we will be talking about sustainable fashion and impact investing. This event is hosted by ImpactPHL in partnership with Impact for Breakfast and co-hosted with Nexus Global. We are really excited for this partnership because ImpactPHL, we're all about building the impact ecosystem in the Philadelphia region. That comes in the form of monthly programming such as webinars. We have impact socials, and of course, our annual Total Impact Summit, which takes place every spring. So please be on the lookout for that in 2023. Impact for Breakfast brings together venture philanthropists, social entrepreneurs, impact investors, all of the like. They come together and invest in the ecosystem. Together, we create a formidable team, and we're excited to do this with them each and every month. Nexus Global, we'll let Stephanie talk a little bit about them later, but essentially they are bringing together next gen investors, impact investors, and social entrepreneurs. So without further ado, I would like to introduce none other than Steph Stevenson. Steph is the co-chair of the Cordes Foundation. She is also the VP of Marketing for Eco Fashion Corp. I will pass the baton to Steph. Take it from here.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm Steph, as Jenny mentioned, and I also co-chair the Nexus working group on impact investing. And we have a new cohort of our Impact Society starting in September, and we're super excited about that. It's all about impact investing and bringing the next gen into it. And sustainable fashion is a topic that's been more widely talked about. So excited to partner with ImpactPHL for this webinar today. Fashion really covers many verticals like climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, water pollution, women's empowerment, etc. It's a $3 billion industry that touches countless sectors, whether we realize it or not, and is ripe for disruption. I was recently reading a Vogue Business article where Caroline Brown at Closed Loop put it perfectly. We're at a tipping point in fashion right now, driven by shareholder activism, consumer demand, regulatory pressures, and growing climate risks, all driving towards sustainable change. This creates powerful investment opportunities across the whole value chain. So today, we're excited to hear from 3 founders from the greater Philadelphia region who are paving the way and proving that sustainability can actually result in more profit for investors. Marcy Zaroff, the founder and CEO of Eco Fashion Corp, Nina Farron, the founder of Fashion Kind, and Dr. Kimberly McGlone, the founder and CEO of Grand Boulevard. In today's session, we'll explore the vast opportunities for investors in our region to engage with the sustainable fashion space, why these founders started their companies, and how they're driving revenue and impact for themselves and investors. And last but not least, there are several investable opportunities that we'll be highlighting in today's session. And just to get a feel for the room, is anyone already investing in sustainable fashion? You can raise your hand. Okay. All right. So we have a few. Well, we're excited for those of you who are already involved in the topic and to share more for those who are interested in learning. So Marcy, we'll start with you. You started your career in the food industry and have since migrated to fashion, but often talk about the parallels between the two. Can you elaborate on this?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I actually started my career in the food industry, unlike most people in fashion, sustainable fashion, who went from conventional fashion to sustainable fashion. I co-founded a school in 1990 called the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. That is now the world's largest holistic nutrition school. And through that, I was in the trenches of the organic movement back in the early 90s. and, really got to learn a lot about the methodologies of sustainable agriculture, one of which is crop rotation. And through that process, I stumbled upon cotton and recognized that you can't really support one part of the equation without the other, because all of the crops in agriculture are growing hand in hand, right, side by side, and there's drift in agriculture. And cotton is one of the most heavily sprayed industries in agriculture, because the misconception is we're not eating it, so it doesn't matter what kind of toxic pesticides and chemicals we're using on cotton. And cotton is one of the dirtiest crops. Right. So when I had that sort of aha in 1995, I coined and trademarked the term eco fashion to take everything I learned in food and apply it to the fashion industry. And what I discovered was, first and foremost, 60% of a cotton plant is actually going back into the food stream, because you gin out all the seed when you harvest cotton. And that seed is getting broken down into cottonseed oil, which we're eating in bread products and snack products and many of food products. So there's a definite connection at the agricultural level, right, where you need crop rotation to build soil health and nutrients in soil, and cotton is very high in nutrients. At the same time, you have that interconnection in the food system with cottonseed oil. And then, of course, I always say it's about connecting agriculture to popular culture. There's very much that connectivity with, people who are eating now healthy are saying, what else, what's next, what more? And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our first basic need is food. And our next basic need is shelter and clothing, right? That which we put on our bodies, not just in our bodies. So the connection between food and fiber, and what's happening is that the whole fashion industry is waking up and looking to learn from, riding in the wake of the organic and natural food world to understand, what has penetrated to, the consumer today, where they're thinking about the farm to table movement. Now we're talking about the farm to fashion or farm to closet movement. And then, that's really focused on the land ecosystems. The other part of food and fiber connectivity is in the ocean's ecosystems. So what people don't realize is every single synthetic garment ever produced in the history of mankind never biodegrades. So where do those fibers go when we wash them and they start to, run off in our washing machines, those microfibers from synthetics and into our environment? Well, they're not only, in the production, burning fossil fuels of synthetics and very destructive, but actually those microfibers from our washing machines are going into rivers, into the water systems, into rivers, and into oceans. And about a third of the world's plastic in the oceans is coming from textiles, right? These microfibers that now fish are eating. Right. So when you think about the interconnection of food and fiber in our oceans, about 90% of fish today are showing traces of microfibers in them. It is a crazy thing. And we still haven't solved for this, but we have to be aware that food and fiber are very much connected. And we have a lot to learn in terms of now, really driving the fashion industry forward, because relatively speaking, we're still at our infancy.
Yeah, as we kind of alluded to before, fashion has a lot of intersections with other industries. And Nina, you often talk about the parallels between impact investing and fashion, a concept you deem impact fashion. Can you share more about what this means?
Sure, and thank you for having me as well. So I've been in what I call impact fashion since 2008. And this was the first time I saw impact and fashion come together. And it was a humanitarian fashion brand that built schools in sub-Saharan Africa from the profits they generated from the sale of branded apparel and accessories. And they were called Omnipiece. And it was my first aha moment, and that I'd never seen impact and fashion come together before, but it also made total sense to me. I mean, if we're going to continue creating and consuming, which we are, shouldn't both of those things be done in a way that goes beyond the physical piece of fashion itself? And so I really fell in love with that idea, ultimately ended up bringing that brand to Penn's campus, exceeding the performance of any other third-party initiative for the brand. And as a result, thought, okay, this is my calling. I want to have my own humanitarian fashion brand. But after a brief stint in the mainstream fashion industry, quickly realized that wasn't the exposure I was looking for. And so I transitioned to finance. I wanted to leverage the power of for-profit business to influence change. So my background's in finance. Also, like Marcy, perhaps an unexpected background to transition to fashion. But in my time doing in finance, I started in equity research, covering consumer discretionary and industrial stocks, transitioned to manager research, and in manager research, learned about impact investing. And very similarly to impact fashion, I thought, well, of course, if we're going to continue investing, shouldn't what we invest in reflect what we believe in? And as an impact investment specialist, I was exposed to so many statistics relating to ethics and sustainability, and so many had to do with fashion. How much water it used, pollution it caused, human rights issues it perpetuated. And I started to realize that many of the same trends I was seeing in impact investing were also true for impact fashion. One of those was the stigma that was associated with it. So for a long time with impact fashion, there necessitated a sacrifice on the fashion side of things, whether it was design, quality, style, fit, 4 core reasons consumers consume. And so there was this negative stigma associated with impact fashion. As soon as you heard impact or sustainability and fashion in the same sentence, many people kind of wrote it off. It would only be a hemp sack dress, I feel like is the term I hear a lot. And so that negative stigma existed for a long time with impact fashion, but it was just no longer the case, especially in recent years. The number of designers who are aligning impact with design points of view has just exploded. And at the same time with impact investing, for a long time, specifically when it came to really focusing on negative screening, there was that perceived or that very real sacrifice that existed when it came to returns. And so there was this negative stigma that existed with impact investing as well, because if you're investing and in order to align your values with your investment portfolio, you had to sacrifice returns, people didn't really want to get involved. So that was a real parallel between impact investing and impact fashion, especially because those had both changed. And so as my work as an impact investment specialist and in my work in impact fashion, education became a big part of it, because education is the first step to any change. So really educating consumers, educating investors that this is no longer the case. Here's why, and here are the options that do not require a sacrifice. And then another parallel was this movement that the millennial and Gen Z generations were driving, both behind impact investing and behind impact fashion, more so than any other generation. And perhaps most notably in terms of differences between these generations and prior, they want to align their values with whatever they do, their purchases, their investments. So impact investing, when I worked at the firm I was at and founded that impact investing platform, it was because of that business opportunity that came from the millennial generation, who would be coming into decision-making roles on existing accounts that we would want to keep, but also new accounts that we would want to attract. And same with impact fashion. This is the future of the industry. Millennials and Gen Z drive the majority of growth in the industry, and this is what they want. So those are a few of the parallels that I've noticed between my background in impact investing and my passion for impact fashion.
Amazing. And Kimberly, you often talk about how there's a missed opportunity not investing in sustainable design. How can local investors take advantage of the opportunity?
I think the way that we frame the opportunity is something that I think it needs a little more texturing. And one of the nuances that I think we should be talking about differently is one, BIPOC people contribute billions of dollars, purchasing dollars as consumers. So when it comes to conversations about sustainability which are typically privileged people who have the means to think about the future and with a different kind of scope of just like the thinking about time. One of the communities that's been so significantly ignored are BIPOC communities. And what that means is that there's a really exciting opportunity to figure out how do we bring more BIPOC communities, voices, consumers to conversations about sustainability. That is one thing that really intrigues me. So in my brand Grant Boulevard, that's one of the things we're really interested in is how do we attract those communities to this emerging market within the fashion sector kind of broadly. And then I think the other thing that is often missed, the other kind of nuance that I wish we talked about differently, was the opportunity to be thinking about impact in terms of how we're creating jobs for locals, particularly those of you who are in the room who are investors locally. I think that we have to be thinking about, yes, automation is here, it's coming in stronger waves and in different flavors, but we're going to have to figure out how do we think about how do we feed people by creating living wage jobs in the region. And so I think that that's one of the things that the fashion industry hasn't done. We've outsourced so much manufacturing overseas. I'm really excited about Grant Boulevard and what we're doing to create some of those living wage jobs in the greater Philadelphia region that sits at this intersection of both sustainability that attracts BIPOC consumers, but that produces it in a way that aligns with an ethical position that Nina was saying that, Gen Z, millennials are definitely thinking about, and that even, generations outside of those are really paying more attention to as we think about humanitarian crises globally, right? How does that look globally? So as that awareness rises, the market and the demand within the market is going to shift. And I think that investors today, in the room today, moving forward as the market shifts, have an opportunity to be thinking about setting up some new routes that are solving problems at a new intersection.
Kimberly, I love, if I could jump in, Steph, but I love what you mentioned, because I think so often, like, what does sustainability even mean, right? It's just thrown around so much, and there's so much greenwashing, and that was another, parallel between impact fashion and impact investing. And so, what I really love about what you're mentioning, Kimberly, is so often when we think of sustainability, we only think of the environmental side of things. We're not thinking of the social side of things at all. And because this term has been thrown around, there is this kind of negative association that comes with sustainability, right? That it's not inclusive, that it's not hopeful. And so, it's part of the reason I use the term impact, because we do feel it's more holistic, thinking about the environmental side of things, but also the social side of things, which, as you so eloquently said, Kimberly, is such a big piece of the puzzle, right? It's creating these opportunities. We work with a number of artisan groups around the world whose craft, is generational. If we don't provide opportunities for them to work and employ this craft, we lose that craft entirely, right? And so there has to be these opportunities on the social side as well, where locals, where individuals can make a living by doing this work.
Yeah, and just to continue that kind of thinking is, for me, it's, some of the groups that have always been locked out of opportunities that create pathways to creative expression. These are groups that oftentimes get caught up in our criminal system, right? Poverty in this country in particular, looking at the greater Philadelphia specifically, what we see happening is poverty creating these cycles that people can't break out of. And I think that one of the things that we have an opportunity to do right now moving forward is to be laying out these new lanes where we say we're going to solve these social issues, and we're going to do it with an ever increasing mindfulness for how we can think about the footprint in terms of, the sustainable pathways that we're creating. So that's what I think is what excites me about what Nina and I are talking about, and that new place that demand is going to drive us. Between demand and the climate catastrophe, we really won't have much of a choice. So, we are at a really important and I think exciting precipice.
You each have very unique and different backgrounds and kind of what brought you to what you guys are doing now. And I'd love to dive a bit deeper on what you guys are each working on. Marcy, can you talk a bit more about what you're building with Eco Fashion Corp and the different verticals underneath the EFC umbrella?
Sure, thanks. And, just to add on to what Nina and Kimberly were saying, you can't have environmental and climate justice without social justice. As they spoke to, these are all very much connected. And I think at Eco Fashion Corp, as a predominantly women-owned and women-run business, it starts at the seed, right? And the seed represents life. And it's about bringing, from our greenhouse of brands, bringing that seed all the way up the supply chain, navigating supply chains and the complexities of supply chains. Eco Fashion Corp is an innovative manufacturer and retailer of sustainable and ethical apparel and home fashion. So the core of our business is called MetaWare. MetaWare is the engine that actually is a source to story business model that makes sustainability easy for other brands and retailers. We have a buildable type of model where a brand or a retailer will come to us, whether it's mass to class. So it could be a high-end fashion brand, or it could be a mass market retailer as big as a Walmart or Target or Costco. And they come to us and tell us, what are the stories they want to tell? Is it women's empowerment, circularity, regenerative or organic agriculture, fair trade, made in the USA, or any and all of the above? And menu 2 is what products do they want to make? So we're equipped to make women's, men's, kids' clothing, as well as accessories and home textiles. We have an office in India, a team on the ground there, and our own farm project that grows 3 trucks of cotton. One is regenerative in conversion to organic, one is certified organic, and one is certified organic and certified biodynamic to the Demeter certification. This project is called Reset, which stands for Regenerate the Environment, Society, and Economy through Textiles. So our team on the ground oversees all of the production, the compliance, the certifications, the inspections and quality control, the logistics, and then embeds the product with a storytelling toolkit where you can elevate the farmers and the workers along our supply chain and address all the impacts. We've just introduced actually a blockchain technology that goes all the way to a QR code on finished product that gives the entire journey of the product, the certifications, the inputs, and every single touch point of the product along the way. We subscribe to certifications like the GOTS certification, the Cradle to Cradle, Fair Trade, but we're very big on transparency, authenticity, and innovation in our supply chains of fibers and materials, as well as new technologies. So Metaware really is a solution provider. We think of ourselves as the Intel inside of sustainable fashion so that we can meet brands and retailers where they are and help them navigate all of these challenges. And then we birthed a couple of our own brands to actually create more awareness in the market. So we created 2 brands in partnership with QVC, which is also a Philadelphia based company. One is called Seed to Style and one is called Farm to Home, where I go on air and actually educate the masses about sustainable fashion and home textiles. And then we have a direct to consumer brand called Yes And, which really sums up my life philosophy, which is yes, you can have style, quality, fit, color, comfort, hand, price, everything you want. And oh, by the way, be ethically made, socially and environmentally responsible, circular, regenerative, and fair trade. So Yes And is an eco-creation platform that's an extension of Metaware, which allows for musicians, artists, influencers, celebrities, other brands, NGOs like the Rodale Institute or the Women's Earth Alliance to actually create product through Metaware, where Yes And will take it all the way to the consumer level. So today, we're just getting started, and Yes And is partnering with companies like Adore Me, companies like Us Weekly, and Metaware is partnering with companies like Madewell and Target. And we're now just at the beginning of a really exciting journey because this industry is very broken, and while the brands and retailers today are all drinking the proverbial, sustainability Kool-Aid, and they want that support, they're scared to tell the stories because of all of, the backlash that's happened in the market. And so we really are not only addressing, being a solution provider to help build supply chains and manage them efficiently and vertically so that we can hit their cost targets and try to meet their pricing needs. But we also serve as risk mitigation, where we know what we're looking for, because I've been doing this for 30 years. We know how to cross our T's and dot our I's and ask the right questions and navigate, all the challenges that, are within the supply chains today.
And Nina, you have a bit of a different business model. So you started Fashion Kind as a blog and has since it's grown into an internationally recognized luxury retail. Can you share a bit more about this evolution and where you are today?
Sure. So I, when I started Fashion Kind, again, it was kind of I identified this need for change, right? And really based in education. And that's what caused me to start it as a blog. And it was on Instagram. The captions would be from statistics like fashion's the second most user of the world's water, second only to agriculture. And then the images would be from brands that were thinking differently. And what I was really adamant about is let me see how, my community responds. Let me see what what people say. I hypothesized people had no idea about this, and that was proven. And so people started saying, we had no idea that this was the reality, but where can we find all these brands, right? Shoppers want convenience, shoppers want trust, they want authenticity. And what I found after doing a deep dive into this space was that there were plenty of platforms championing sustainable fashion, but no one was doing so in the luxury sector, which I know is controversial perhaps for some, but I feel very passionately about the opportunity there. Statistically speaking, it's the luxury sector that shapes the industry overall. And if I'm all about influencing change, I believe very strongly that I need to be able to show that this could be done at a luxury level in order to help achieve economies of scale and shape the industry as a whole. And I just started listening to a lot of feedback from customers, but then I started to get a lot of feedback from designers. You know, I think a lot of times when people think of retail platforms and retailers themselves, primarily think about the customer side of things and not the designer side of things. And what I started to see, and I spoke a little bit about the millennial and Gen Z generation, was that they were fueling the majority of growth behind the luxury sector. They're spending significantly more than any other generation. We have the emergence of what are called millennial Henrys, high earners not rich yet, who are spending at least $86,000 of discretionary income every year. Again, significantly higher than prior generations. Not only do they spend more, but they have very different types of items they want to spend on. Their definition of luxury is entirely different than prior generations. You know, they want to invest in pieces that reflect far more than their net worth. They want pieces that are unique. They want pieces that are sustainably and ethically made, you know, and they're sick of going online and finding the exact same designers, the exact same pieces, the exact same generic transactional experience. And also notably about millennials and Gen Z relative to other generations, which was true with impact investing as well. They don't want generalists anymore. They want specialists. They want those who are experts in their field, who they can really trust, who have that authenticity that you just can't purchase no matter how much money you have as a major retailer. So ultimately, on the flip side of that, you have designers around the world. Like one of ours, Efrain, is a 45-year-old Venezuelan designer. You know, despite the economic and social crisis going on in his country for over a decade, he was adamant about building his brand locally, and has succeeded in doing so. In his atelier in Marrakech, he creates everything, designs everything, and has created a safe and stable work environment for his employees, many of whom are female heads of households. But similarly to a consumer who's really sick of what they find from retailers, these types of designers are also not being given what they need. So they no longer, the retailers have no interest in their story, in telling their story or content, no interest in their impact. And really these designers get lost amongst the household names. So what I realized, and my co-founder Sophia Bush realized, is that we have this group of consumers and this group of designers, and we need to create that connection between the two, between a consumer here in Philadelphia and Efrain in Venezuela. And so that's what caused us to start, you know, merge from a blog to our e-commerce platform. Again, we exclusively focus on luxury. We bring together designers, artisans, consumers from all around the world to build the next gen luxury platform of the future through on-demand production, exclusive content and curations, and exclusive focus on positive impact. We're setting the new standard for how we create and consume luxury fashion and ultimately fashion overall. And want to be mindful of luxury, because I know many view it as a niche opportunity, but the reality is it's not a niche opportunity. By 2025, the personal luxury goods market online, or personal luxury goods market, is projected to reach $380 billion, and that's a conservative number. Of that, at least 30% of all of purchases will be made online. If you look at the majority of consumers of all generations, when purchasing luxury in particular online, they prefer to do so from platforms like ours instead of brand websites or department store websites. And of course, you know, luxury has historically expanded and outperformed relative to other sectors in the industry in various economic markets. And you have the millennials and Gen Z, and they really define luxury differently. So that's ultimately what led us to starting Fashion Kind, the platform. You know, this is about reinventing the future of luxury and ultimately the industry overall for consumers, but designers as well.
You also have a different type of business model. Grant Boulevard was born from your determination to be of service to not only marginalized people, but also the planet. Can you share more about your unique value proposition and how you incorporate sustainability in your work?
Yeah, sure. I founded Grant Boulevard in 2017. I just finished watching Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th, which is about the criminal system. And for me, in thinking about this idea of creating jobs for formerly incarcerated people, which is really the push and why I entered into industry at all. I've been a classroom teacher at that point for about 15 years. It was really about my growing awareness of the crisis of recidivism, and recidivism is defined as this cycle of people coming in and out of incarceration. In Pennsylvania alone, we spend about $46,000 a year incarcerating anyone. 80% of the women that we incarcerate, which is in fact the fastest growing population, 80% of that population, 80% of them are moms. So when we talk about systems, right, we talk about solutions. For me, it's about, how do we do better by not making problem X worse, right? So the intention with Grant Boulevard is to create living wage jobs, particularly for women who are formerly incarcerated. So that will include the relaunch of a beta program that we started in 2019 this fall in partnership with a Philadelphia nonprofit, where we're going to launch Fashion the Future Forward. It's a 14-week cohort cycle where we're going to teach 30 women over the next year how to sew. And then through both our business to consumers, that's our fashion brand, employ them at a living wage. And then we're moving into the hospitality space. So we've done work with the W Hotel. We've done work with local food co-ops. We're moving into working with La Colombe. And, we're really trying to be thoughtful about this way in which how do we create these jobs in ways that doesn't do further impact to the planet. So we use a couple of different textile strategies at Grant Boulevard. One of those includes a zero waste design aesthetic, which is remixing menwear. So we're trying to reduce fast textiles that are going to landfills. We place some with dead stocks, which are fabrics that are overages from larger companies. And we produce 90% of what you'll see in our brick and mortar, which is in Philly, West Philly at 36 in Lancaster. We produce 90% of what you'll see in Philadelphia. And that's what makes us really special. We're producing within 3 miles of where we're selling. And then we have an e-commerce site. And the future for us is this scalability of how do we create this ecosystem in cities across the country where these large pockets of poverty. And we want to work with local nonprofits, build out this workable workforce development program, and then make accessible to to consumers in those cities fashion that is both locally made and sustainably sourced. And in working with larger corporations, Fortune 100 corporations, how do we help them meet their sustainability liability goals? How do we help them to meet their corporate social responsibility goals? So, for us, that's how we're kind of approaching it. And I think that as I think about what comes next, as how we're navigating COVID and whatever pandemic we meet next, there's going to have to be an intentionality for how we're creating pathways for families to anchor themselves in living wage work and solutions for creating those jobs that don't do further harm to the planet. And so it's really exciting. We just became the first Black-owned B Corp in North America in the fashion space in April. So that's something that we work really hard on. Those of you who understand the importance of B Corp in terms of establishing a standard and the time intensive it takes to actually get through it. It taught me a lot about business leadership. It taught me a lot about really thinking about, how do we build better businesses that are really thinking about the values that B Corp has really been an amazing advocate for. And I think that for those of you who are interested in that particular kind of investment, where you're thinking, yes, about your ROI, but you're thinking about it both in terms of how it impacts people and the planet, I think Grant Boulevard is a really good fit for you.
Okay. Now that we've had the opportunity to better understand what each of you are working on, I'd love to really hone in on the investment opportunities here. So, Marcy, you frequently talk about how now is the time for investment and how we're at the pinnacle of a perfect storm. Why is that? What should investors be aware of? And how is this pertinent to EFC's current fundraise?
Yeah, so, I always say to brands and retailers now, it's not even about staying ahead anymore. It's about not being left behind, right? It's no longer a choice, but an imperative, because consumers, especially that next gen, as Nina spoke to, they're demanding transparency. So there are 3 core, big issues in the fashion industry because our systems are so broken and they absolutely need a reboot. You have siloed departments in retailers and at companies that don't talk to each other. And to actually drive sustainability, we need holistic ecosystems. There's subcontracting, where a brand places an order with a factory and a garment can change hands up to 10 times in a supply chain And oftentimes the brand or the retailer doesn't even know the people that are making their products. And then, of course, as you've heard, you know, the fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the world and has some of the worst impacts in energy and water use and climate change. You'll see those statistics vary, but up to 8%, you know, if you include agriculture and transportation and other areas that touch the fashion industry, our carbon footprint is significant, right? So companies are really looking at divesting out of China to some extent because they're too heavily weighted in China. So they're looking for other areas to manufacture in, they're looking for solutions, and they're looking for onshoring as well. Secondly, they're looking to change their fiber and material strategies. They're looking at sustainable cotton. They're making big sustainable cotton commitments. They're going to be 100% sustainable cotton by 2025, but they don't know how to get there. Third, they're being held accountable to take climate action, right? To make science-based climate targets. So they're making these commitments like we're going to have a 45% reduction by 2030, but then they don't know how to get there. So we need to find ways to help these companies do it and do it right. Right. And as Albert Einstein said, you know, we can't solve today's problems with the same consciousness that created them. So by changing our consciousness and addressing these impacts and addressing greenwashing, we also have to look at that accountability and what's happening now. And I think investors should be aware and why, you know, those who are out there creating solutions are really primed for great success is because government is actually stepping up into the fashion industry. We have the Fabric Act in Congress right now. We have the New York Fashion Sustainability Act, a bill in New York to hold fashion brands doing over 100 million in business to expose and be transparent in their supply chains, make science-based climate targets. You have countries like Norway and the EU who are actually calling out greenwashing and actually now, telling brands they can't make certain claims, right? So there's a lot of issues out there that we need to solve for. And with that, there's a lot of opportunities. So this trifecta, I say, that's happening, that's accelerating our industry, lives at the intersection of an awareness around regeneration, where it's not just about sustainability anymore, because we can't sustain what is, it's broken. We have to rebuild it. We have to start over and we have to go from a mindset of degenerating into regenerating. We have to look at circularity, and it's a big, obviously hot topic in our industry, the cradle to cradle principles. What we take from the earth, we have to give back to the earth, and look at, how do we build new disruptive business models that are going to address, circular business models, renting, repairing, swapping, reusing, reselling. And then technology. It's a game changer, right? Smart fashion, virtual fashion, on-demand production, lean manufacturing. And, that is a big opportunity that's coming in our industry today. At Eco Fashion Corp, we address all of these impacts. We address all of these problems. Like I said earlier, we meet companies where they are and help them along that journey. And our newest frontier that we're introducing in September in just a few weeks is a partnership with the largest on-demand printing company in the world to bring zero waste on-demand printing that's done domestically so that we can reduce the need to have big scale production. We can have blanks and merch programs for organic and natural food brands, beauty brands, NGOs, celebrities, artists, and musicians, as I mentioned earlier, as well as, the industry to have certified organic and regenerative merchandise from our farm all the way to finished product that's certified GOTS, including the printing, which is non-toxic and printed and customizable on demand. And we're going to be making that available and launching with a couple of really great partners in a few weeks. So just the beginning. And I always say, as Steph hears me say all the time, 1 + 1 = 11. We're all stronger together than we are apart. So the key to unlock change in our industry is collaboration. And we have to come together to accelerate these changes so we can all wear the change we wish to see in the world.
Amazing. And Nina, I've known you for a while and you've really built something great. And I believe this is the first time that you're raising capital. Could you tell us a bit about why right now is the right time for you to open up this opportunity to investors?
Yep, sure. And it is the first time we're raising capital. And as I alluded to before, luxury e-commerce is really broken for designers and consumers alike. It was brought online by Net-a-Porter in 2000, and since then has remained largely unchanged, despite a drastically different consumer landscape with millennials and Gen Z, who not only define luxury very differently, but who shop very differently as well. And so the future of luxury is impact, and this is being recognized by conglomerates like LVMH, who have specific impact parameters and targets that they've outlined. Major heritage brands. Speaking of B Corp, Chloe is the first heritage brand to ever receive B Corp certification, with more in the coming up. And then retailers, even Farfetch, the largest luxury retailer, put out a statement that by 2030, 100% of the products on their platform will be sustainable. So clearly the entire sector of the industry realizes this is the future of the industry, but they don't know how to get there. And it's going to take them significant time to, which leaves ample opportunity for Fashion Kind to capture meaningful market share. In terms of what we've done, we bootstrapped a 7-figure business. We have a $650 AOV, 36% repeat order rate. We've done so while eliminating the key risk associated with the traditional retail model. We hold no inventory on hand. Instead, we're powered by technology to facilitate dropship, but also on-demand production, which is a much more sustainable production method. And even while doing so, we've maintained a gross margin of 43%. That's over 2x the traditional dropship platform. So that's a direct result of not only the value add we provide our consumers, but also the value add we provide our designers. And both of these categories, consumers and designers, love what we're doing, but we want more. They want more. As I mentioned, this is not a niche opportunity. We feel very strongly that there's so many dollars, billions of dollars going into luxury every single year. And so it's just as valuable to divert those dollars into more meaningful purchases that support opportunities for job creation around the world, stable working conditions, safe working conditions, sustainable materials, and all the other categories of impact that we're addressing. We really, our team, my co-founder, Sophia Bush, is an actor and activist. My partners, Derek, our creative director, myself, and then a team of 10 freelancers have the track record, the expertise, and the influence to scale this business to become the new leader in luxury retail, and ultimately become an attractive acquisition for existing players like Farfetch, which I mentioned earlier, all of whom have identified this is the future. We just don't know how to get there. So right now, this is our first raise. We're raising $3 million to fuel our growth, support our growth, expand our full-time team, and then fuel upcoming initiatives and partnerships, strategic partnerships such as our bridal boutique, Kind Committee, and partnership with Auberge Resorts and Violet Grey. So what we've seen, it's taken a long time to get there, but for the industry, but the industry has finally caught up to people like Kimberly, Marcy, and myself, who've been doing this for a long time and believing in this for a long time. And very specifically, I believe that there is an opportunity in the luxury sector. It's prime for disruption. And we're the ones to do it. So we'd love to have you join. And we are closing our raise soon at the end of the month, but would love to have conversations.
And Kimberly, how can investors support your work, and what are the ripple effects created in the Philly community?
Yeah, first I want to thank the Untours Foundation, who's in the room. They were one of our initial investors when we first went out and we're thinking about what would be the best place for us to be thinking about just launching this really bold experiment and a solution that we know is the way forward. We think about the percent of funding and backing that goes to Black women in particular, and from investment dollars are very rare opportunities. And I think it means that what we've done, what impact investing has failed to do, is to appropriately bring into the table the kind of innovative thinking that change is going to require. And they say, and it's true, the closer you are to the problem, the closer you are to the solution. So we're about to open up our first raise. And for those of you who are in Philadelphia and who are thinking really strategically about what the future of the city looks like, and the crisis, you understand with a lot of clarity the crisis that the city faced, and you understand the issues of violence and crime and poverty as outshoots of them. And I think that for those investors who are thinking about how do they add to their investment portfolios, companies that are owned by Black women who are thinking about the future of both sustainable design and the living wage work, what I talked about earlier, I think our Boulevard is going to be a great fit for you. And again, our intention is to scale. That's how we want to do it. There's a question in the chat about how do we how do we move away from making sustainable fashion simply luxury? And that's going to mean, I want to just acknowledge that question, because I think one of the things it's going to be challenging to do, but not impossible, is the way in which fashion prices have historically been kept low are absolutely toxic. It means that workers don't get paid, and it means that overproduction is just what's standard. And that's not what Grandin Boulevard aspires to. We aspire to meet the demand of the market. We aspire to bring more BIPOC people into conversations about sustainability. We aspire to give people an exciting opportunity to curate a new kind of closet, one that aligns with an emerging new set of values that is really clear about everything that we're up against and how little time we have. So for investors who are thinking about that space and that space that we see opening up, and our ability to sell to consumers across the country and around the world, I think you'll see that what Grandin Boulevard offers. Thank you for placing our impact report into the chat. It's a great opportunity and introduction to what you'll see coming soon. Please reach out to me, and I'm happy to talk to you more about that and make sure that when the first raise goes live. I would hate for you to miss out.
So we heard about Nina and Kimberly, the direct opportunity to invest in your company. Marcy, do you have a quick sentence or two, a minute or two on the opportunity for Eco Fashion Corp?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Steph. Yeah. Eco Fashion Corp, is at the right place at the right time. And we believe we're an unparalleled solution provider, ready to meet the needs of today's brands and retailers to make sustainability easy and help them meet their goals and their needs, driving traceability, support, and risk mitigation. Our unique business model positions us to drive the acceleration of bespoke manufacturing to help change the game and connect source to story. We generated over 4 million in our second year of business. And given all the current development in our pipeline, we're projecting 12 million in 2023. And we're now kicking off our Series A fundraise officially. And we're looking to raise between $5 and $10 million to scale the business. We have a team of 15 in the US, 5 in our India office, and we're ready to scale. We're really excited, and the engines are revving. So if you're interested, you can reach me at marcy@ecofashioncorp.com, and I'm happy to send you information.
Amazing. And I know Shonay is going to send out a follow-up email tomorrow with more information on everyone. So in our last 10 plus minutes together, I would love to take any Q&A from the audience and any questions that you guys have. Just throw them in the chat or come off mute. Michael, was your question answered or by Kimberly or Marcy? I'm sure could take a stab at it as well about the affordability of sustainable fashion.
Do you want?
Yeah, if you could. And the thing is, if I look at good food, you could look at good food and you could say that how does that impact low and moderate families? And it's cheaper for them to go to McDonald's than it is to eat and spend the money on good food. Are we at that same stage with clothing? And if so, what are we doing about that?
So
yeah, go ahead, Marcy, and then I'll answer after you.
So, everyone needs to be at the table for us to really, shift the paradigm of this industry, right? And we need, as Nina's focusing on luxury, we also need to focus on, the mainstream consumer, the mass market consumer, because it's, fast fashion is why we are where we are, right? The proliferation of disposable clothing that's contributing to all these horrific impacts. So, when you look at a supply chain, as I mentioned earlier, a garment can change hands 10 times in a supply chain. So I've always focused in my career on figuring out how to cut out all the inefficiencies in a supply chain, the brokers, the markups along the way, and start at the farm or the raw material and build up the supply chain so that I can be as vertically integrated as possible, as efficient as possible. I also do a lot of consolidating of fibers and materials and yarns and fabrics in order to create more efficiencies so that at the end of the day, we can be cost competitive, but we can add value to products. So it's, again, not about sacrifice or deprivation. It's about value add, where it's not why would you buy, sustainable, circular, and organic fashion? It's why wouldn't you? If you can have everything you want, and that's the yes, and have a way to make a difference to human and environmental wellness and farmer and worker welfare and future generations, addressing the environmental and social impacts, then it's about, voting with your dollars and having it all. It's the yes, and it's no compromise, and it is doable, but it does take, building a different kind of supply chain than what historically the fashion industry was built on, which is companies would go to a factory and the factory would build down the chain and use, fabric brokers and yarn brokers and cotton brokers and all these middlemen along the way. So you can be affordable, accessible, and authentic. And we've demonstrated that at Eco Fashion Corp through our partnership with QVC and our partnership with other mass market retailers that are coming to life at this time. Because that is important to me, to make sure this is something that's inclusive, not only size inclusive, but inclusive to all income levels as well.
And I can't speak to, I haven't been to where Marcy produces, just honestly, I don't know. And so, I think one of the things that we all have to do regardless is you have to know who's producing the goods that you buy, and you need to know what's happening on the ground where that's taking place. That's a major part of it. And I think that, I like that Nina's coming in at the luxury space. I think luxury fashion, she's made the case, is that it's a lane. And I think that for other brands like Grant Boulevard, it's a lane that we're interested in. So one of the things that we're thinking about as we work towards this new sprays that we're going to do in the future of the brand, and something that we've already been experimenting with on a much smaller scale, is how do we present garments at 3 different price points? So there are garments that you're going to see coming out this fall that are luxury, studded diamonds, that are, jeans that have like all these fancy studs on them, that are going to be luxury pieces for people who want to walk into a room and make a statement. There'll be pieces that are reimagined, that are for the guy, speaking of another question in the chat, who's interested in a button up that has a little bit of flavor. So we're going to try to figure out how do we attract more men. I know that there are a lot of men, emerging market of men, who are thinking about sustainability and their design aesthetic as well. How do we produce for that consumer as well? I think it's about having just a diverse strategy for how we're producing goods, and always thinking about how do we pay the women in our team a living wage? That's a core driver. If your business can't pay a living wage, then it's not a business. It's a step above any other extension of anything that's ever come out of imperialism and colonialism. And I think until we really get clear about that, until we break up with that tradition, then the conversations about climate change are short and silly. That's just, we have to figure out how do we reimagine our supply chain from the way it takes care of people, if we're going to care about how it takes care of the planet. Those things can no longer be seen as these divergent things, that it's a menu. It's both of them have to be things that we pay attention to.
And just, on the heels of what Marcy and Kimberly are saying, I think what's so important, kind of coming back to education, is the question of why things, fast fashion pieces, for instance, cost what they cost, and what the sacrifices are on the environmental side and social side that are being made behind the scenes in order for that t-shirt to be $5. To be $10, right? It's actually a broken system, and so I would hope that that it's clear that what Marcy and Kimberly are doing, in particular, are changing that system, right? So that yes, affordability and access is paramount, but that it's still fair behind the scenes on the environmental side of things and the social side of things, so that we're not, just because we can afford this t-shirt doesn't mean that someone across the world can't afford to eat that day or live, have a living wage because we bought that t-shirt at that price. So I do think that there's, it requires going behind the scenes, it requires asking questions, and it requires education at the end of the day, so that we can also pivot how we contextualize pricing when it comes to fashion, and when it comes particularly to fast fashion and those prices specifically.
And I think that I'm just adding on to that, Nina, I do think it's about a much more healthy recalibration of our values, which is like at the core of what any kind of systemic change requires. It's going to be, let's look at what we have now. Let's look at the supply chain as it is now. Let's look at sourcing as it exists now, how do we really invest in bold experiments in a much better, a much healthier way forward? And I think it's we together in this room, we're the people who are going to be the first to get to that front line of what that really optimistic change can look like and what that experimentation can look like. And I think there are people in the room who have the means to fund it. So that's super exciting to me.
And I want to add one more thing about, going back almost full circle to the connection between organic food and organic fiber. When I started in the organic industry, Whole Foods was called Whole Paycheck, right? And today Costco is the largest buyer of organic food, in the US, and it's made organic food more accessible to people. And so, when we're looking at the economic model of the organic industry, it's not just about, the environmental and social, it's also actually a good business case. Farmers in America who are growing organically are making 35% more money than farmers growing conventionally. And in pockets of agriculture in the US where there's organic businesses and organic farming, you see something, it's called the hotspot study, that shows that household incomes are going up by $2,000, poverty rates are decreasing, and communities are thriving. So there's and job creation is happening in the organic industry. And there's just so many benefits economically as well as environmentally when you drive, good business. So it's about doing well by doing good in the world. And that's why I hang my hat on organic agriculture, and organic fiber is really at the core of Eco Fashion Corp to connect food and fiber, because it's the same thing. We're not just what we eat, we're also what we wear and what we put on our bodies. Our skin is the largest organ in our bodies, right? But also being that cotton is so heavily sprayed, we have to address that. So when you look at the cost, the economic model, it's about scaling organic and regenerative agriculture through leveraging the power of the fashion industry, for me, which a third of the world's textiles are cotton. So,
wow. Well, thank you so much, Marcy. Thank you to all of our panelists. I just wanted to hop in here as Director of Community and Content for ImpactPHL. I have to say thank you so much to our ImpactPHL community, all of our new audience members that have tuned in today from Nexus Global and Impact for Breakfast. We really appreciate you. Special thanks to Steph Stevenson. She helped to curate this and pull it all together. And I just wanted to let you all know that we have some events coming up, and I have a partner in crime. His name is Mr. Kozak. He's also an ImpactPHL board member who can share a little bit more details about what to expect next.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is really impressive. We're in August, and we're trying to do programs, and we do programs every month, but this, the people that showed up, and you just go through who's here, and it's a pretty impressive group of people. So thank you so much, and Charnay for helping put this together, but also our speakers. I know that that's the reason that they've come to listen. So this is truly inspirational. So thank you, and we look forward to an update in the near future. As Charnay was saying, is that we do have a social coming up on September 14th. So if any of you are in the Philadelphia area and would like to join us, that's going to be 5 o'clock on September 14th. The other thing is that we're doing something a little bit different in October. So Thursday, October 13th, if you can mark your calendars for that, we're doing a collaboration with CCS Fundraising. They're a fundraising firm for endowments, foundations. In other countries, notably in Australia, they're doing things on blended finance and catalytic capital. And they have one of their partners and a prominent office is in Philadelphia. And we're partnering with them on a program that'll be held at the Racket Club at 12 o'clock. It's a luncheon. It's limited to 100 people. And we're partnering with the CFA Society of Philadelphia and also with the Philanthropy Network. So we are looking for a good group of people there. And again, we'll cut off the registration on that at 100 people. So thank you all for coming and supporting ImpactPHL.